Welcome, everybody, to the Out of Home Insider Show, a podcast like no other, hosted by the one and only Tim Rowe. Get ready to have some knowledge dropped on you and to be entertained, because nothing's more valuable than food for your brain. So sit back, relax, we're about to dive in as the best industry podcast is about to begin.
Cool. So, Bob, Brian, it's exciting to be able to get together again so quickly after advertising week. We were together just a few days ago on a panel called It's Just TV. How do you feel like it went? I thought it was a cool conversation. Bob, how do you feel like it went?
You know what I loved? I love the fact that we started this, you get ready for these panels and you're like, we're all going to go over some things that we want to talk about. And I think we all got to do that for about 90 seconds. And then the questions rolled in, and I think you did I was happy, Tim, you just put us right into the questions versus going through our rhetoric. The audience wanted to know stuff, and we were there to tell them. So you were sharing what we thought about it, at least. So that part I loved. It was very interactive. I thought went great.
Very interactive. I went back and looked. It was like 5 minutes in. We got through introductions, and then the questions started flowing in. Brian, I know you were excited to be at Advertising Week in general, but especially so to be on the panel. How did the experience, how did that go for you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it was pretty incredible. The opportunity to be able to speak at Adweek, which is such a tentpole event in the advertising and media industry, was super humbling, first of all. So having been in this industry for, 16 years now, that was the first time I ever got to do that. So it was amazing. And then I just felt from the turnout at our panel and the questions that were flowing in, it felt so much more interactive than an actual fireside chat panel. I mean, there was genuine interest in the realm of digital out of home, in what, is going on within that specific channel. We didn't even have to stick to our script that we had planned out. I mean, within 10 minutes, we were already on to 15 Q&As. So I loved it. I couldn't have been any happier with it.
Yeah, that was, and really good questions too, like meaty, high intent questions, not just like, hey, can I do a billboard like this? It was like, how do I resolve, identifiers, and how can I execute with programmatic in real time and take advantage of moments? So we're going to recreate some of that. We've got all of the questions here from the audience. Bob Gruters, CRO of Loop TV, led teams at MTV and Facebook when it was still Facebook. Built Revolt Media with Diddy. Brian Rappaport, of course, Quan Media Group, working with Mischief at No Fixed Address, VaynerMedia, Skims, Olipop, Prize Picks, lots of great brands. So we're going to have a conversation that is entitled It's Just TV, but I think you're going to find it's really a break from the norm and a pleasant interruption to the status quo. So, Bob, we started the session off with a question about context, and specifically we called out how the audience was there in person. Some folks were at home listening. Obviously, now this is being consumed by a global podcast audience. How does context shape the way we consume content?
Well, I think we've gone, and I'll even change my answer up a little bit from what we talked about. I think what's interesting is, if you remember, we used to be told what we could watch, right? What we could consume as media. Go back to TV Guide, the Sunday, or the newspapers that told us what was on, magazines that were available maybe in our local area, billboards that were limited in scope but around us. So we were told, here's what's available. The difference in context is we now know what to seek out. We know to find what we love, we find our passions, and we find that ability to consume media in ways that's convenient for us. If you ever told me 30 years ago that I'd be able to watch TV on my phone, or I would be, I'd be at a college and I'd be able to watch a football game, or I'd be doing these things, I would have just told you, probably not. It just seems very different. And what I'm happy about, I've always been kind of like a tech nerd. I think what tech did for media is one of the greatest, scariest things in the world. It's super powerful. It just created a more ubiquitous nature for all of us to kind of consume what we want and where we want. For me, context really, really matters in the sense of you need to have the right thing at the right time to appeal to the right person. And so it really does matter if, for our business, we talked about this on the stage, if I'm buying pet food and I walk into Petco, I probably want to see something that's a little bit relevant. So maybe it's pets doing things, right? Like really
Sure.
cool, funny little videos. Who doesn't like to watch a puppy, right? We all went to the DPAA event, right? What did Barry do? Barry had puppies out there for us to
Back
play
to
with.
back puppies. Yeah.
So I think that context actually matters. It draws you in. It makes a moment of, hey, this is for me, or this appeals to me, so I love this. So I think context allows us to, as a publisher or a media owner, to earn attention as opposed to just expect it. And so we always talk about earned attention in other forms of media, not so much in the world of out of home, digital out of home, streaming out of home, whatever we call it these days. But I think that allows us to earn the attention because it's relevant. And relevancy will always be, for me, one of the linchpins of media success.
Beautifully said. Beautiful open. Brian, how are you seeing brands apply the use of context to the overall media strategy?
I mean, it's about being in the right place at the right time. And I mean, it's like what Bob said, being where your core audience is and showing up at different moments. And I had mentioned, on the panel the other week, what Prize Picks is doing, how they're solely focused right now. I should say solely focused on a digital out-of-home strategy, blending programmatic with traditional digital out-of-home, whether that, is being inside sports bars between the hours of 6 and 12, from Thursdays to Sundays during peak NFL timing, whether it is being on every screen surrounding Crypto Arena in LA Live, to kind of capitalize on the start to both Lakers and Clippers season. Really showing up at moments where their core audience is going to be not only sports fans, but that Gen Z audience. Same thing when Drake and 21 Savage are playing 5 nights in a row in LA, changing their creative to feature lyrics from a Drake song, to kind of speak to that Gen Z audience. And I think, it just continues. I mean, Olipop utilizing digital street level throughout Chicago for their first major brand campaign and focusing obviously on key neighborhoods like West Loop, like River North, where there's going to be a heavy flow of traffic, but consolidating, their presence outside of the major Whole Foods in River North, where obviously they are very heavily featured. So things as simple as retail presence, things as simple as like being contextually relevant with your placements for a given brand. I think it's important. And I think brands that obviously hone in on doing, that the right way are the ones that ultimately see success.
And we hear kind of the application of different types of content, even just within that one use case, Brian. Bob, this question for you: how, as a publisher, how do you think about acquiring and clearing not only the content being played on the screens, but then integrating the media from a brand into that content?
Yeah, that was important for us at the beginning. When I first got to the company, we probably had about maybe 50 channels. And then we were building and building and building. And all of a sudden it felt like cable of long ago, where it's like 300 channels, right? We've got so many different things. But I think it was important to allow a lot of choice for a business, right? Streaming kind of hit us all as consumers, but never hit the business community, the retail community. So we gave them that choice. And I think we got smart pretty early on. Said, okay, let's rein this back in. So too much is not good. Too little is not good. We want to be like Goldilocks. We want to be just right. And so we've worked on that, listening back to the retailers of the content that they want. And then we have a really smart content team. I mean, these people came from Sirius, MTV, in the music industry specifically, in the streaming industry. And so we call it our studio. And we mean that very specifically because what we want to do, we want to find the best content. But again, I can't be, if you go back to that example of Quibi, who spent billions and billions of dollars on short form content. Sure. And it failed for probably a million reasons that none of us will ever know, and it probably doesn't matter. But the model of paying too much for content was their Achilles heel, right? You couldn't get over that because no matter what you did to monetize it, you were going to be losing money in perpetuity. What we think about is like what we call like a fairness act. What is good for the content producer, and then what's good for us? And then we have to get to an understanding of, we're going to curate this content either on our own or with you, because we want to make sure the content's about 3 minutes or less, because that's how people view streaming content from a fast platform in an out-of-home environment. So we want to make sure all that works. We have to have a very special relationship with the content provider. We have to have that relationship where we can be honest about what we need, that they can be nimble and flip it, and that we can have the ability to kind of customize on the fly for what we may need to do. And so I think that that's worked really well, just being open and transparent with the provider. And we've really kind of changed those relationships over time. And I think the relationships by change, I mean, they got better, they're stronger, they understand more about what does it take to thrive and really do well in an environment like retail. And so in doing that, it's allowed us even to go back into like our standard lineup and say, I think we could do better. I think we can even do this like in a different way. We always have to think about how the advertising is going to come in. We have to think about if we're signed with a major chain, how do they bring their content in, right? They don't just want us. So you put in a digital signage package, which has to be robust and nimble and really malleable. And so you do stuff like that. But for us, I promise you, like we're constantly listening and saying, okay, what else do we need to do? We're gonna make an announcement about our digital signage sometime in 2024 that I think is kind of revolutionary. Like it's going to be great for businesses. There's lots happening, but we're always in a state of change. Like we're always evolving this. We're always looking at what could be better. But we're a company, right? We're a public company. We think EBITDA at the same time.
Right. How do we do it responsibly in a way that we can predictably and sustainably continue to scale this business? And
that's exactly right.
Brian, this question for you. Traditionally, out of home, we think of as really an ad first channel, but with video content, with programming, that conversation is changing. How are brands receiving that? Are they leaning into opportunities that are surrounded by the content, or is that still at the beginning stages?
Yeah, I mean, I think that taking advantage of branded content is a key thing for brands now. I mean, it kind of elevates the out-of-home experience up a notch. You know, I look at gas station TV, which I think is a great format in the digital out-of-home space, where you have the ability to align with specific, content at the pump, like based on what type of audience, you want to reach. So whether you are, running kind of branded content with sports or pop culture or something along those lines, like you can do that. So you can truly go after the audience you're looking to go after. I mean, Outfront Media, who has a subway system in New York, or I should say the MTA, they have this feature on their digital live boards and subway platforms called So Yummy, where they feature, different recipes of different, dishes. And we work with Fresh Direct, and Fresh Direct, kind of took this up a notch, where we actually were putting recipes that you can kind of cook up via Fresh Direct ingredients on these screens in branded, tandem with the So Yummy series. And then there would be QR codes where you can go up, scan the QR code, and all of a sudden all of the ingredients for that meal were in your shopping cart. So, it was kind of like taking what was a traditional out-of-home ad placement and elevating it a notch. And I think that when brands start to think about that and find ways to align with the right branded content or the right content partners, that's really truly resonate with their audience and build up brand legitimacy.
And I Bob, think Tim, I would just add, just building off of what Brian said, it's like, we also have to know the kind of content that the advertising community finds acceptable, right? What do they want? Because I think if you call content a sandwich board, right? Two slices and a Coke for $5, and you say, oh, that's content, I'm going to put your ad right next to it. I'm a former advertiser. I'm a former media director for Sony Electronics and an agency guy. I would be like, nope, that is not the content adjacency that I'm looking for. That's not the context. I think back to Brian's point, there's a lot more work on the media end in the planning and buying of media today than there ever has been, because you have to take all of that into account now across the board in a medium like out of home that is so dynamic and changing so unbelievably fast that I think all of us are like, I think our heads are spinning a little bit. But I look at the work that our agency partners are doing and the way that they're navigating this, it's smart. I think they're really thinking this through, but there's a lot more to it than just saying, oh, we'll just take this market in this type of retail environment. So much more to think about now.
And it would seem like there's an opportunity to even center around the content and how that content parlays across different contexts. If I'm not mistaken, Bob, that So Yummy content, that's part of the Loop TV network, isn't it?
Absolutely. And again,
so now you can create that.
Yeah, I think about it this way, right? So just imagine, I always say this, brand X, right, comes in and says, I want to have my own network in my 10,000 stores. Could you imagine the undertaking a brand would have to do to make something like that happen? I mean, seriously, It's years, it's content right negotiations, it's tech creation or purchasing and alignment. There's a lot of work that goes into that. And right, the startup would be insane. A company like us with 200 channels can come in and say, what content do you have? Brand X.
Mm-hmm.
And then here's our content. Tell us about the brand essence, right? What is it about your consumer and your brand? Where is the alignment? And so it's almost like the brand brief that agencies prepare for their clients. We can actually build a bespoke channel for somebody utilizing our content, their content, anything that they want to bring that to life. To me, that's kind of cool, right? And that's something where Brian mentioned before branded content. That would be the ultimate branded content example for me, is like having a bespoke channel that is actually super appealing to your customer base, but people want to watch it.
It's interesting, Brian. I know you do work with John Boy, and what an incredible story that whole media enterprise is. It would seem like there's an opportunity there for these kind of independent budding media creators to find new distribution in the real world, create alignment.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that you mentioned John Boy, because I had a conversation with them literally last week about finding the synergies between what they're doing and out of home. And what I mean by that is they're not just a Yankees podcast. Like, they have a ton of, incredible different sports content, sports podcasts, different shows. They've obviously brought in ex-athletes. Like, they are incredible, and they're a rocket ship. And, they have such a deep fan following, almost in the vein of like a Barstool Sports, but a little tamer, a little bit different. And they kind of like want to offer up brands an opportunity to align with what they are doing to reach their audience, but maybe add an out-of-home spin to it. Is there going to be some sort of fun, wiffle ball game taking place during all MLB All-Star Weekend in Texas this year that they're going to be doing, and they want sponsors involved, but maybe on top of, sponsoring the actual wiffle ball, game, there's the opportunity to brand a coach bus, to do aerial banners, to do so it's like, where can you kind of blend content, things that kind of are on the periphery of out of home with actual out of home? So I don't know. I mean, I'm always constantly trying to find ways to look at out of home outside the realm of the traditional bounds. And I think that was a question. I mean, that was a question that we were asked last week. And, it was kind of like budgets and out of home and working in holding companies and what should be considered digital, what should be considered video. And ultimately, I just think that like there's too much attention being placed on these different channel silos. And I think it's ridiculous. I think that's, ultimately you're just going to convolute things. I don't know. I don't want to stand on my soapbox here and talk about why I think it's a little insane, but you get what I'm going to.
Well, let's just take the question. Here is the exact question from the audience. Give you an opportunity to answer it. Should brands be bucketing their out-of-home ad dollars differently? Out-of-home usually falls into the traditional ad bucket. Should we be looking at programmatic, digital out-of-home, place-based? Should we be looking at those spends differently?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I think out-of-home is out-of-home. It's what I've always believed in. And I think it really drives media partners insane, as well as other providers, programmatic partners insane, when you're working with a holding company. And if you are building a campaign for a client and you have a programmatic component to it, you have to bring in a whole other department that deals with programmatic. If all of a sudden you wanted to deal with like a sponsorship at a music festival that kind of skews the outside realm of like out of home, you have to go and like bring in a social team, print team, because there's like print components to it. So, and it ends up being a 4-month lead time. Then legal gets involved. It's crazy. It is insane. And I'm not saying that you need to skirt rules and like do things like half-assed, but all I know is that on the independent side, and I'm sure a lot of my other fellow, like, friendly competitors would agree, like programmatic sponsorships, come to us. We'll make it happen. We look at everything like one lane, one way, and it makes clients' lives so much easier. But I mean, that therein lies the difference between, I guess, like holding companies and independent shops.
Bob, what are your thoughts, having sat on both sides of this conversation, led teams? What do you think?
So I think I'm going to tell you this because, Brian, I'll jump off your soapbox and jump onto mine. And I'm so sorry. I am so freaking annoying at this point lately with this. I think we're robbing outcomes from clients by putting things into buckets. Because when I was a client side, my strat team would come in at my holdco and tell me, this is your media mix strategy. And we all believe in the media mix. Everything contributes. But what happens if they didn't write in out of home? But that was the perfect way to do something. And the technology allowed it like it does for digital out of home. Even at my side, you have no idea how much work that would have been to go ahead and say, no, I really want this. I really need to do it. Because now there's a creative fee, there is an out-of-home team fee. And all of a sudden, well, you're not contracted for that. You didn't contract for that in your master agreement. And again, I've been out of the client game for a long time, so I don't want to speak that that's still how things go. But I'm going to assume that as an industry, we freaking love buckets because we charge for buckets. What I would rather do, and I literally jump over to Brian's side. Brian is dealing with the outcome the client wants to achieve. And he's going to make that happen through his strategy, his planning, and then his execution. What I would love to see us all do is love to see us focus on client outcomes. And that's how we start to do things. So the budgets are a bit more fluid, and we think about what are the right touch points. When I started in the business, we always talked about touch points. Where is Tim Rowe right now? Where will he be later? And how do I engage him? Because I've identified him as a prospect. Now, if I have to follow a bucketing strategy, I'm probably going to miss you in 3 places because I just didn't think of that when I did the budget parameters. That's a miss, right? I say it this way. We're stealing from clients by not allowing them to be able to go ahead and forage the most strategic, in-your-face media effort that hits their goals, because we as an industry are so focused on making sure that the swim lanes are well-defined and that the measurement is well-defined. I believe in measurement. I believe in all of that. But I also know intuitively, we know how to get in front of people. We know how to engage customers, and we know how to drive outcomes. That's what we started to move away from. And I really do believe in a big way, it's because of the bucketing of budgets and fees. So that's my gigantic soapbox that I have never been.
I love it.
It's like a Costco-sized soapbox.
I support Bob. I'll never forget. It took me in my old agency. I had a sponsorship opportunity with a great music festival in New York for a client. And I think it was like a 3 or 4 month lead time to make something happen. It really was not the most
it's a quarter of the year, a third of the year rather.
And then literally, I don't know, fast forward 3 years later, I'm at Quan, and another client comes in, and we get a last minute opportunity to sponsor a major music festival in Atlanta that's about 4 weeks out. And within a week, we get everything locked and loaded and signed, and we're there developing and legal and everything, contracts reviewed, and it was just it's night and day. I was like, this is crazy. And that's just a microcosm. But again, I'm not holding companies are important. I understand the need for them. I have a lot of friends there. I love them. That's why I'm here today. But that's yeah, you get it.
I had a great finance professor then, and he said to look at the incentive structure. If there's ever friction in the way that things are being done, take a look at the incentive structure.
So true.
Let me give you some stats here. 1 in 10 people are using a VPN to mask their location. 50% of the population are using some sort of ad blocker. The cost to create content is up 20 to 40%. All that to say effectiveness, advertising online down 30%. The cost to acquire a customer online up 50%. Yet 80% of retail is still done offline. We're going to give $395 billion with a B to Amazon, Google, and Meta this year.
Mm-hmm.
How is out of home? How is the real world enabling brands to better connect with Gen Z, who are really the leading driver behind this avoidance of ads online? How is out of home enabling brands to better connect with Gen Z? Brian.
I mean, again, I just think, I use this example when we were talking the other day, the Taylor Swift movie that's out that everyone's in love with. NCM, who's a major, media partner who sells ad space in cinemas, offered an opportunity to align with all Taylor Swift movies, which, that's there's nothing more Gen Z than that. I mean, granted, everyone loves Taylor Swift. I love Taylor Swift, but that's an example. I just think that the vastness of out of home as a channel now has allowed you to meet specific audiences in specific places where they are. If you want to be at Governor's Ball in New York City because that is a Gen Z audience, you can be at Governor's Ball in New York City. You can either have a sponsorship there, you could have a digital truck drive around Flushing Park and be present there. You could brand a bus and have a contest and give people free rides to and from New York City. And that's your Gen Z audience. And at the same time, if you want to align with Gen Z branded content, I don't know, at doctor's offices to make things a little bit more lighthearted before going in to see a doctor, through digital out of home, you can do that. You can go ahead if you're a Gen Z brand and do that. So it's not just about throwing up a digital ad in Times Square, throwing up digital ads on the subway. It's where's my audience going to be? How do I effectively purchase, my digital out of home to align with the times that my audience is going to be at said location, whether it's doing it programmatically or doing it, traditionally.
Yeah. Throwing something up in Times Square, that's the 2023, 2024 version of just mailing it in. There's better options.
Yes, mailing it in, unless there's a reason to do it.
Yeah. Unless there's a reason to do it. Bob, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, so I'm going to give you two thoughts on this one. One, again, is I think the fact is we all knew that mass media, scaled media, linear TV back in the day was such an amazing thing to turn on because all of our retail partners would say, I don't know why, I don't know how, but when I flip a switch and TV goes on, all of a sudden my store is flooded with people and I'm selling things. And when it turns off, I kind of stop. Now, the truth is it was never just the TV. It was all the media in the mix, right? It was all their retail billboards. It was all the stuff that they had done in radio. Everything contributed to it. But what we've lost, right? What we have lost is this mindset of what is wrong with reach and awareness. We have to reach people. We have to get them in unexpected places. Years ago when I worked at Gannett Outdoor, we had an expression said, the last unavoidable medium. And that is very, very true in my opinion, right? You have to really go out of your way not to interact in the world of out of home or digital out of home because it's so in your face and so prevalent, right? And the technology, at least in digital out of home, really makes sure that you've got proximity and you're being counted if you're in that area because it's a valid impression delivered. Now, I also think that we have gotten so good at narrowcasting audiences in advertising. So I've identified 6 people over here, and they have a proclivity to buy Doritos. So I'm only talking to those 6, and then I want to know every outcome and everything that they did, right? So we've gotten very good at bringing things down. I think there is a world where things live in more of a scaled model of reach and engagement. Again, I believe in data, I believe in measurement and all that stuff, but I don't think we ever throw the baby out with the bathwater, and reach and awareness are still very important components of advertising. I'll give you a quick example. When I was at Facebook, one of the categories I managed was entertainment, and the studios were really a big focus for us, and we did so much. So we said, we've got all this data. This is obviously before a lot of the PII concerns. We're like, all these people interacting with movie trailers, going to pages, following the stars, and doing all these things. It's amazing. We're going to be able to predict and show how to open a horror film because these people all went to horror films, so they're going to go to the next one. So here's what we found out. The more narrow we got in our focus, the more targeted we got in our reach, the less likely people were to go to the movie. And here's the reason why. Because today, right now, I want to laugh, I want to cry, I want to swoon, I want to get inspired, and I want to get excited. Those things happen when they happen. Just because you wanted to see or you saw a comedy yesterday does not mean you will see one today. So the truth is, our mindset plays a really big role. Out of home, whether you're Gen Z, Gen X, or a boomer, your mind is still going on your own, right? We have to have the ability to reach you where you are and then spur you to an action, spur you to a consideration, spur you to just be aware and see it. Out of home does that exceptionally well without really invading your privacy. It's not getting in your face. It's not invading your devices. It's not invading your living room. It really is pervasive, but in a very, in my opinion, very respectful way.
Quite. And as a consumer, the ability or the opportunity to consume content, even if it is an ad, to consume it passively, that's the highest level of opt-in that you could possibly want to achieve as a brand who's considering all of those elements. How can I do this in a brand safe way and not get myself in trouble? And look, at the end of the day, you want to be targeted, you want to be measurable, and you want to do it with an efficient cost profile.
Efficient, right?
Efficient. Out of home does that. Bob, the one technical question, or the most technical question that we got on the stage last week, was one of the biggest challenges programmatically is passing the correct identifier so that buyers know what they're getting.
Yeah.
How is a publisher, how do you think about resolving that challenge?
So we think about it constantly. We look at all the companies, the Foursquares, the LiveRamps, on how much data can we actually pass? What can we make available? Because everybody is talking about the utilization of data. I do find that not everybody, they may all talk about it, but not everybody uses it. But our goal is we want to pass as much as possible. I want to pass venue type, geography, like lat long, and then content type right now. Now, and as I get better in determining the demography of the people that are in the locations where my screens are, I want to be able to pass that as well. I want everybody to be able to buy us, plan us, and execute against us the way they want to, right? And this is where if somebody wants to call me digital out of home, awesome. I'll give you all the tools you need for digital out of home. If you want to buy me as CTV, I will give you all the tools to buy me for CTV. And if you want to create a hybrid of streaming out of home, I will give you all the tools there. So the ask I always do is when we talk to partners, what is it that you need? So if I don't have it, let me work on getting it. Let me just really figure it out. Right now, the end all be all for me would be like a UID and to be able to find that and pass that back. And we're working on that in real time. I want everybody that utilizes digital out of home or streaming out of home, I want them to feel really confident in what they bought was exactly what they thought it was. It did what it was supposed to, and it reached the people they were supposed to in the time it was supposed to reach them. And so that information and passing all that data back, that is number 1, 2, and 3 of what we care about every single day. We've got the content game. We've done a killer job on premium curated content. Now I want to make sure that the data we're passing back and forth meets everybody's needs. And if it doesn't right now, work with me. Don't just not buy us. Tell me exactly what it is you need. And then we're going to work on it together. And you know what? These are all going to be firsts because this is all new territory.
And I think that as a user, as a marketer, the opportunity to have such a tight connection and provide that active feedback loop to craft exactly the product that you need and want, that opportunity has really never existed before. It's always just been, here it is, right? My son says, you get what you get and you don't get upset.
That's preschool, baby. That is preschool. That's the first thing they teach them.
That's it. But now, no, you can be an active participant in shaping what the media experience looks like, ultimately shaping the ad experience that your customers are having and the outcome that you're trying to drive.
Well, we're working right now. It seems to be like we've got betting and online gaming really coming on in mass. And so we're working with a lot of those partners. But what we have to do in something like that is we're actually building out the content for them. Okay. Because let's be honest, right? If you're gambling or if you like that, you like to do the betting and online betting, watching the stats and stuff on a board is really interesting, but it can't look like everything else. So when you start to talk to one of these online betting companies, like, hey, what is different about this is just another example of it. What's different about the way that you engage with the people that use your service? How do you do it that's different than other people? Okay, let's build that into a content experience. Let's make sure that resonates exactly with your brand and the people you're trying to attract. And then we'll promote it like crazy. And it goes back to your first question about contextual relevancy. It goes back to what Brian talked about finding the right fit at the right time, reaching the right people. Yep. And I think what it comes down to is that is a collaboration. That is not me just throwing out a one size fits all. Help me understand what you're trying to accomplish, and we're gonna get her done. But it only works when I have somebody who's super collaborative and really wants to lean into it versus just booking a bunch of spots and dots, which we can do that too. But boy, can we be more effective if we lean in together.
That's a whole lot more fun too.
Absolutely it is. That's ownership.
That's ownership.
Yep.
And frankly speaking, you have a fiduciary responsibility to whoever gives you money to do that. So there's my hot take.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're exactly right.
Brian, we continue to see the rise in digitization with out of home. Bob talked there about the data and first party, third party data, the crescendo, the question I'd like to bring us home on. Why should we be taking out of home seriously in 2024 and beyond?
Well, I think measurement, first of all, I think from top of funnel to bottom funnel, there are so many opportunities to understand the effectiveness of this jump. Look, out of home is better than any other media channel for awareness. Like, that is just a simple truth. I mean, if you want to blanket a city, if you have the budget, if you really want to go gung ho and your goal is to be felt anywhere or everywhere, I should say, even more so than a Super Bowl commercial, and you can quote me on that. Like, I think out of home is the way to do it. But that's not the reality right now. You have brands that want to understand that their dollars are working for them. So whether you are doing an in-depth brand lift study with competitors, with understanding intent, awareness, et cetera, like you can do that. Then you can kind of move down the funnel and do a web attribution dashboard. And through anonymous mobile location data, understand who came into contact with your out-of-home placement, who then went ahead and took action, who went into a store, who downloaded an app. And then, you can also run a sales lift analysis and understand how adding out of home into a media mix led to whatever the KPIs are, increase in sales, site visitations, et cetera, by looking at historical sales data and then understanding, how adding out of home, into your media mix kind of like change the game up. I mean, there are so many ways to see that it is performing for you. And I think performance ultimately is why you should take it seriously. And I think, at the same time, that unblockable nature, which we have been saying for years, it is unblockable. It is unskippable. People aren't buying ad-free versions of their life. You can't walk around and not see, an out-of-home placement. So if you have the right creative and you do things the right way, you are going to be an Olipop who just dominated Chicago and has gotten nothing. And I'm not saying it because I worked in the campaign, but everything I've seen has been like amazing creative, amazing placements, contextuality. You're going to have that opportunity. It's not going to be, why is a brand all over the place and why is it like invading my life? And sometimes you get that, when you're served an ad on your phone after talking about a brand, you feel like you're being followed. It's a little creepy. And out of home just kind of is a little bit more natural and endemic.
Bob, same question for you. Why should we take out of home seriously?
I think Brian said it actually exceptionally well. I think the tech companies and the local governments are not going to allow this massive privatization as much longer. I think your own personal rights to privacy, we've seen this since Cambridge Analytica, we've seen GDPR and then CCPA. That's not going to let up. It is not going to be an easy thing to go ahead and grab your information, right? So we're moving sort of kind of away from mobile phone IDs, right? Mobile IDs. And then we're going back to the future with email. At what point is all of this going to be off the table where we just simply can't do what we used to do? I think contextual targeting, which out of home affords in a very good way, geographic targeting, which is its mainstay. I think there's a lot of things that we're going to be able to do that are going to be largely unaffected. I think my favorite line today is that nobody's buying an ad-free line of vision, right? You just can't do that. And Brian nailed it. It's like, so what am I supposed to do? I'm like, I'm ad-free, so I'm going to cover my eyes when I go into a bar or a billboard. Yeah. The world doesn't work that way. So I think it needs to be taken seriously because there are so many other inhibitors that are happening to traditional, and I call traditional media, what's going on in digital. Digital's been around long enough to be a traditional medium now. There are so many blockers. What about the made for advertising sites, right? Where it's just like, these are not even sites, for God's sake. And so I'll guarantee it's billions of dollars are being funneled there. And it just doesn't make any sense. So I think for us, we offer an honest exposure to a target audience based on the terms of the advertiser. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. In the case of digital out of home, it's an extension of TV. And that's why I keep saying it's just TV. In the case of out of home, it's an extension of engagement with a message, right? Which is always the most simple message in the world, but it conveys what you want it to convey. And all of this is measurable. Can't sit there and say, we're good with out of home being 4% of the overall US advertising spend. That's just crap. It needs to change. And it changes when the buckets go away. It changes when we focus on outcomes. And it changes when we literally kind of figure out what is an invasion of privacy and what is allowable. And we are not there. Now is the time to put your eyes back on digital out of home and say, I can figure this out. This works.
Beautifully said. Gentlemen, I can't thank you both enough for being here a second time, for recreating this. I think this was even better. I think this was more raw. I think that we were able to not only revisit concepts, but build upon them, which hopefully has been really impactful for the audience.
So
and I'm sure that
we're going to take this on the road, right? We're going to do the sphere. So. We're going to do the sphere next, and then
sphere.
Yeah, we're going to
take my talents to South Beach.
Exactly. No, thank you guys so much. This is a blast.
Absolutely. We will be doing this again, and we'll be doing it more often. Something that wasn't a factor last week that is today, and I'll just add it as a bookmark for the next time. You might have seen the news. It was in the New York Times yesterday, I believe. Google, Facebook, Twitter are no longer going to be promoting news in their platforms. Why that's a problem? Well, there's a lot of advertising dollars that go to news sites. In 2020, 11.5% of news media traffic came from those three platforms. As of September, Before this went into full effect, it's down to 6.5%. It is about to be a bloodbath out there. It's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. And out of home, we have a solution for you.
Absolutely.
Bob,
yes, we do.
Brian, thank you.
Yes, we do. Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thanks, Brian.
Have you found this to be helpful?
This is fun. Yeah, this is awesome. Sorry about my technical issues.
No, you're good. You're good. I'm going to put the outro right on top of it. If you found this to be helpful, please share it with someone who could benefit. As always, make sure to smash subscribe wherever you're listening. Make sure to leave the podcast review. That's how you help us grow. See y'all next time.
Quarter century, I finally came to my senses. I finally got my hand up on the tinted Benz, kid. I see the world clear through my tinted lenses. With the dream and the drive, the possibilities endless. Now print that, send this all the way to Tokyo. Take a trip down south, down to Mexico. Next stop, Shanghai, the world-class trade show. First class all the way, cause that's how we roll. Yeah, call us the rock star businessman. Rockin' shows, we handle business, man. We got our own future in the palm of our hands, cause divided we fall and together we stand.